legislative services that write the amendments.
All right, yeah.
They put numbers on things.
Yes, got it.
See, like, we could adopt this amendment as, well, we can,
It's weird, because having an amendment.
well, we couldn't adopt it, but we could. Could we? You sure?
Yeah. And this number, it's a legal amendment.
That's right, we got the official.
We got the official copy.
Oh. That's right.
Because without the amendment,
And I think this is what the sponsor presented. It's not the original bill, but the amendment.
and I wonder in the Senate what the very original bill was. I guess it would have had to been what was seen, except it says as amended, so we got it after it was amended. So
After
we
it went
don't
through
get to
their
see it.
process, right. Yeah, so we haven't seen the actual original,
Mhm. Just as well.
right.
People are laughing. It sounds ominous.
I don't think it was amended that much, I think it had a separate committee behind, and,
Oh,
go to assessment, and the last part was added on. If I'm remembering right, but it's been a while.
Already, oh, we still.
we are ready to start. Rick is not coming, he's under doctor's orders, he's ill,
That's what I was afraid.
won't be coming.
We're good.
And Mary said she was going to sit in but not participate, so. I will open the hearing, the subcommittee hearing on Senate Bill 343. And we can start talking. I do have the notes from the original hearing.
Well, the first thing that, whatever we do, I think, the repeal of the school administrative unit legislative oversight committee, I think would need to be taken out of this if we're gonna go forward. I think the testimony on that was clear that although not much may have been done recently, it's a good tool to have available. And I don't think it would affect very much the intent of this bill. I don't think it would damage the intent. So that would be my first comment.
My first concern on this bill is this necessary? Hasn't this already been done in many forms? And this issue really debated, and there are groups who feel that Common Core is too lenient, there are groups that too continual. And all this has already kind of been thrashed out. Do we really need to duplicate stuff that's been done in the past? That's my concern about this.
I agree with you. A lot of this has already been hashed out. The focus of interest to me, I don't care so much for the top half of the bill, because I think that's already been dealt with in our local school districts. Is the section on the area of assessment.
The DAX.
The highlighted part. That's the new.
The only thing I'd say about how much
Isn't that the same? No,
They passed out an amendment when they gave us the bill,
you need the amendment.
so,
I think this is it right here.
All right.
That's the
let me
amendment.
see
There's
if I
more.
have a
Okay,
copy.
let me see.
I might have a copy.
You may not have been here. I don't remember.
Okay, because I was only looking at the bill.
You left early.
Yeah, there's 32 lines instead of 18 lines.
Let me give you a copy of the amendment,
You got it, okay.
but that's hers.
Oh, all right, all right, thank you.
You may want your own.
I want my own.
The only thing I'd like to observe on this, and I thought about, has this been clearly represented. And I think if you go back to last year, SB 48, I think in that bill, we took out disposition for learning. However, if we think about this year, could I go right exactly to some spot and find this? Probably I could with a little help. But does the general public have the ability to be certain that this one very volatile issue of more or less, I don't know, what's the right word here, of casting a student, and I think that's a major concern, is that clear? And I think this bill wants to make it very clear, and even though it may be redundant, I'm not so sure it's a bad idea if we can really clarify this.
I understand where you're going, but I'm thinking the same people that can't find where it is now, adding this, they'll still go back to the website on Common Core and find this language, because we're not changing it there.
But can you tell me for absolute certainty that that test will not have any type of somewhat of a psychological background, this idea of determining the nature of the kid's mental state, so to speak, or disposition for learning? Because initially I thought, well, disposition for learning, it seemed like a good idea, but then you start thinking about how could that be done? It almost seems like a psychiatric write-up about a kid. And so for me, it keeps frustrating me because I thought we took this clearly out of the picture, and it keeps popping up again. And maybe inappropriately, but nonetheless it keeps popping up, and that's a big concern for me.
That it keeps popping up,
Yeah.
I have a feeling that no matter what we do, it will keep popping up.
Yeah.
Because it's in language other than our statutes.
Yep.
Or
For instance,
it's in
for
language
Washington.
other than what our department understands that we are looking for. I think we've made it very clear to the Department of Education that this should not be part of our assessment. I think we've made it crystal clear.
But we are temporary. What will happen 2 or 3 years down the road?
Heather, do you have a reply to that? What will happen 3 or 4 years down the road?
Sure, I mean, we provided a letter to the committee during one of the House Education Committee hearings in writing from Smarter Balance that would never be the case, that we would not be testing for disposition.
We can't guarantee anything beyond our.
No, someone could change the whole thing.
Right,
Sure.
someone can come in and change law.
Sure.
But could we be sure that the essence of that letter is posted on the DOE site in a manner that's very easy to access so people can stop being frustrated by this?
Can we get directions for the committee that we can hand to any constituent on where to find this language?
Sure. Be happy to post, we can certainly post it as well as I can provide the link to the committee, if that would be helpful.
Yes.
I wasn't gonna say anything.
You weren't going to?
Are you referring to the letter that was signed by the 34 commissioners? Is that the letter you're referring to?
No, during one of our meetings, the issue of dispositions on the assessment came up. So we went to Smarter Balance and pulled out the statement that was brought forth to the committee about dispositions. That was found on the Smarter Balance website. We asked them to clarify, because that was not our impression of that statement. We asked them to clarify what they meant by that. So they prepared a letter that I can send to you and also post. It was a little different letter than that one, Representative Grafton, but yeah.
And Madam Chair, could we then, by the time we meet in committee, I know probably we have it, we should be able to find it, can we get that reissued to our committee before we meet on this as a full committee?
When do you think we'll accept this?
I'm sorry?
When do you think we'll accept this? On Tuesday?
It's scheduled for Tuesday.
So could we ask,
Heather, can we get that by Tuesday?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. My allergies seem to be
You didn't take your pills this morning.
I did, well,
I take mine first thing, I take mine. If I didn't, I'd be everywhere.
My eyesight.
I don't take mine in the morning, but
Oh, you
You know,
know?
we all
No.
keep the pharmacies in business. I took my 5 pills this morning.
I
I
don't
take
take
mine this morning.
I take
I wish I didn't have to.
I took mine at 4:30 last night. It's a 24-hour pill.
Yeah, I do, mine,
It's clearly not
Me too.
24 hours.
I take, me too, mine is 24 and I take it in the morning. Somehow or other it manages to last.
So in light of that, do you have a feeling about this bill? Not
Well-
my allergies, but this bill.
Clearly, that's the prevalent concern of many, including the committee, and we keep thinking it's taken care of, and I just want to be 100%. My general opinion of the bill, I would somewhat agree with you that perhaps it's not necessary, but when I say the bill, the amendment, I almost think that if we did this, it would help to educate the legislature a little more than they are on what are, minimal standards. I know there was discussion in the testimony somewhat about college readiness, and I'm not sure how that's perceived to fit with minimal standards. And I have to tell you that whenever there is a new, whether it's No Child Left Behind years ago with California Achievement Test, that was a private company, everyone used it. I'm not sure it's a bad idea for this to be reviewed in a study. Maybe it's already been done.
It has.
I know.
And I think we can use the opportunity when we kill this on the floor to re-educate. I'm
No
sorry
offense,
if
but
that's
I
a
don't
little blunt,
consider
but-
those days very educational.
Well, you can have an opportunity to speak to the ITL, that it's been done, and explain where it's been done, and how it's been done, and how many times we talked about this. I mean, that's an opportunity for education, I agree. But I don't think we have to pass a study commission in order to provide education for the House.
Can I just say it again? I wasn't going to say anything. First of all, it assigns this entire study to the Legislative Oversight Committee, which is in statute, and a separate committee that's in your little black book, the membership. And that will change next year. But my question is, as the Common Core, or the College and Career Ready Standards, also known as the Common Core in terms of the English, mathematics, and so on, are being implemented, it seems to me that as every district is considering them, they're comparing them with the standards. So that comparison is already going on at the district level. And you know, and I know, that one district has said, we don't need these. Manchester has said, well, we're going to sort of start with them and make them more rigorous, or try to develop standards that are more reflective of what we think Manchester students can do. Other districts are going with them because they've felt that they're, so there's all kinds of comparisons going on at the local level, which I think is great. I mean, that's where the discussion should be going on. But my question is, if we assign this, and they say, if the outcome is, well, the current standards, we don't feel, either they rise to the level of rigor or they don't. What are we going to do with that information? It's going to be a lot of time, a lot of energy. What are we going to do with it? Are we going to say to districts in Manchester, or districts that have implemented it already, you have to, they're not what we thought they were. So, develop some other standards, or here we go with another. Well, I can respond to that by saying, in the region I represent, not just my district, I spoke to the folks who are working on this. And in my region, everything went well in terms of preparing for the Common Core. And that is the basis, has been the basis of my judgments. Yeah.
I can't speak to that which I don't know. And I do not know what are the impediments to other districts trying to implement. I can't know that. I just know that in the region, they even got together regionally, and they didn't have a problem with, just as you said, studying the present standards and how are we going to change the standards to meet Common Core. That wasn't an issue for me, but the issue still is for me, and the concern for these same schools is the testing and how that's gonna go. And
Well, that's the
that
second part
level
of
of
the bill.
uncertainty
Yeah.
is, it would be true if this were any other testing system. But the other thing that happened here, unfortunately, is this was connected to our waiver, which comes from Washington. Well, whoever created this test, whatever the actual facts are, and I think I understand that people have a perception of Washington having expectations on us, and some of those expectations, like disposition for learning and so forth, are not acceptable to our residents. So this became, I think, much worse than it would have been if it was like, I don't know, Nevada test of basic skills, just to be a little silly. It would have been connected to the federal government. I still think it would be good to go forward, but I have to defer to the subcommittee.
Well, the
And I will
subcommittee
defer to the
doesn't have to
committee.
vote today. I mean,
No.
the
We don't
chair
have a
could call a
final
meeting
say.
Monday, Tuesday morning, and you could, meet at that time. And also, if it's not ready to be exact, we have lots of time. May the 8th is the deadline for accepting all the bills, so, I mean,
Well, would it be proper then, if you're not gonna like the bill, once it gets?
I'm just telling you how I feel and
And
put it
that's
out there,
fine.
and that's just my,
That's fine,
One
we
person's
each have
opinion.
to,
Yeah.
have our concern, and I appreciate your feeling that this is already done. Would it be possible to at least adopt this amendment to the bill and then go forward with just one piece? Could we do that here? That doesn't imply that we necessarily want the bill.
the amendment is the bill.
the
Well,
amendment
that's
is the
what I
bill,
mean.
but
Replaces
I'm
all
not willing
after
to
the
do that.
enacting.
Okay.
I'm not willing to put my name on this at all.
Okay, so you just wanna let it go until we get to committee.
Well, can I chime in a little bit here?
I agree.
I don't, support the idea, Common Core is new, and the assessment are all new. And to start second guessing something even before it's fully implemented, and studying its faults or whatever, before we even know for sure what the experience is gonna be, seems like just a way to create turmoil, and I really don't support this bill at all. I mean, it's not something that's gonna shed light on what the results of Common Core and the assessment program are gonna be and how useful it's gonna be for the kids. It's something that's gonna keep it in political play, and I don't see that as necessarily beneficial.
I just feel, and I'm not gonna get all hot.
No, please,
Understand that, I'm just telling you how I feel. I just feel it would be an opportunity for some further dialogue where people could look at this. I'm not sure for the legislative oversight committee, how much input they get from folks at a meeting. I would like to think that were they to do this study, that people of that concern should come in and get their question answered. Anyways, I've expressed myself, I'm gonna be nice, and I'm done talking.
You don't have to even be nice.
No,
Yeah,
But
okay.
what I want is for this subcommittee to come with a recommendation to the committee. I'm not willing to go to the committee with no recommendation,
Yeah,
to the full committee.
and I think we can vote, and if I'll vote what I believe, and we can vote.
Representative Burke, did you have something you wanted to add?
Not really, I'm not exactly sure that I think we should have this.
I'm gonna get
That's
legislation on the other state.
the way it
and
is.
See what what the changeover is when there's a new legislature, who's responsible for it and so on.
All right, a
Just-
little
And if
rough.
we find that
Well, I wanna get the law
there's
that
invasions
enables
of
it.
privacy and assessments of things that schools have no business assessing, political things or whatever, and there's abuses of this process, then I think this legislation could make a lot of sense. But until this actually occurs, are we working, are we just generating a process that's not serving a purpose? So that's my concern. I mean, if Common Core and the assessment things, and it starts to derail and cause problems, and it starts to go into ways it was never intended, then sure, let's do this. But I don't say it's a matter of timing. You know, that's my thought.
Okay, I'm not gonna, I've expressed myself, I'm
Okay.
fine.
All right, well,
I just think that, for New Hampshire, for the Department of Education, we have looked at these issues and we have answered these issues. And if you think we need,
over and over
and
again.
if you think we need to do more education on that for the people who keep bringing legislation forward, if you think that that would help them to stop,
Well,
bringing,
I help them to understand is how I'd like
Help
to say
them to
that. Perhaps
understand.
you would say stop, but I would like to say understand.
well,
They choose not to understand.
Well, here's the item that makes my point. Line 11 in here. Examine whether Common Core standards remove local input from what teachers teach. Well, that notion's been debunked any number of times. I mean, Common Core does not dictate what is taught. It dictates what the skills, the net skills should be, not the subject matter in the curriculum. We've been through that so many times. Well, here it is again.
I understand.
So I don't want to support legislation that brings a rehash of what has already been clarified.
and I think we can provide just as much education to our colleagues by killing a bill as passing a bill. And with the benefit of not creating this extra work that this bill would require. That's just my,
I keep saying I'm done, but you keep.
yeah, I know,
raising it.
I know.
But
No.
as long as there is an opportunity not to just educate and tell folks, but also to listen to their concerns, and that's the other side of the coin. And I
Well, I
hope
think
we
we
continue to
listened,
do it.
we
Yeah.
took the bill, we
But I mean,
debated
in the
it.
future, we listen. And if it turns
Oh,
out.
I don't think we're gonna shut off opportunities to hear.
Well, this won't be the last word on this.
Well, when you look at how long we had No Child Left Behind and how many years it was recognized that it's not going well, how long did it take to get out of it? It didn't happen overnight.
I think that the budget, it is a committee that includes 3 people from the House and 3 people from the Senate. I think Senator Stiles is serving as the chair, so that the next legislative session, the chair of the House Education Committee will be the person to assume the chairmanship. So that will be a responsibility of, not necessarily, yeah, I guess it does have to be the chair. Because in the previous administration, when Representative Alboni was chair of the Education Committee, he did not meet at all. He chose not to do anything with that committee. So that could happen again, in which case, none of this would happen. So it's all up to
So it is sort of
what happens
timing
with the next November.
So what you're saying is we could, even if we did pass this amendment and it went to that committee, depending on leadership, they might not do anything
That's
with it
right.
anyway.
That's right. Because for the previous administration, prior to this 2 years, nothing was done. Now, whether or not they had anything assigned is a good question, but I know nothing was done, because Senator Stiles told me that. So, but I mean, it all depends on who's gonna chair. You know, who's the majority and what their attitude towards following through on responsibilities.
So essentially, without this being put forth as a study committee or a commission, there's really no assurance that any of this would be done anyways.
That's right. And what will happen?
Sorry, that's.
When,
a
no,
little
that's
disturbing,
true,
but
I mean,
that's all right.
and then with the report, now the report is due. Oh, there's no.
There's
No, there's no report due.
there's no report due.
So in other words, we're assigning, at least according to the amendment, wait now, just a
Right, the
minute. The amendment replaces the entire bill, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yep. And even in the original bill, there is no, there's nothing required of the Legislative Oversight Committee by way of a report.
Unless that's in the legislation, and the purple book. Because this just is duties of the Legislative Oversight Committee.
Right,
A new duty of them,
I've
so,
got this, yeah.
so following all of those duties, there may be reporting requirements.
It's, I can list the, we have review the development and implementation of school performance. I'm not gonna read all of them, but just basically what the active nouns are. Review the provisions of RSA 193-H and submit a report, whatever that is, 193-H. Propose legislation that is needed as a result. Number 4, confer with the Commissioner and the State Board of Education. Roman 5, analyze existing Department of Education programs and initiatives which support improved school performance and accountability. It could be incorporated under there.
Well, that would, yeah.
Roman 6, receive reports from the Commissioner regarding the status of public education, etc., etc. Review and approve statewide performance targets required under RSA 193H2. I'd have to look that up to see what they are. Number 8, receive reports from the State Board of Education, including rules recommended. Number 9, review the unique pupil identification system established under 193 and propose legislation as a result. Review the implementation and results of the program relative to accountability. And what this is doing is proposing to add 11, yeah, so it would be to do this study. So, but it doesn't.
so you're indicating to me that other than the specific wording on the core of Sparta Balance, that is the duty of that committee anyways.
All of this
Because that's
would be-
ongoing.
Yes, that's already in statute.
And so then, except for the repeal part and the emboldened part to absolutely take out disposition for learning, etc., which we're assured has been done already, the bill is more or less just a restatement of the duties of this committee anyway.
Each of these items
That's what it seems.
could be related to one of their already required duties.
But depending on who the
Depends
committee
on who the
chair is
chair
gonna
is.
be,
That's right.
they could choose to do something or not,
Or not.
whether we pass this or not.
Yeah.
Whether or not, you're right. They could do all of this without us
Without
passing it.
this.
If they choose to leave.
Yeah, okay,
Or they could choose to not meet at all.
yeah, I know, I understand that. Okay.
Okay, 193C5 covers the assessments that are required. So, the areas of assessment that are in statute now say, areas to be assessed shall include but not be limited to, so there's your door, your open door. Reading and language arts, mathematics, science, history, geography, civics, and economics, so it does.
Not limited
So
to
what this
those,
is
though.
doing is trying to close the door.
Okay. Well, thank you, I'm not trying to be obsessive,
Nope.
my wife uses
You have to
another
speak for
term.
2
She
She
uses
uses another
for me,
term.
but, I do feel a responsibility to understand.
Yeah.
And that's been helpful.
Sometimes it is interesting to go back to the law book, you know, and see what in fact exists already.
What are the duties?
Well, essentially, a lot of what's in the first part of the bill is just how to do these anyways.
Yes.
Okay. I'm pretty well done talking.
Okay.
or something.
No,
Well-
you have to represent the other member who is not here, so you can talk for two people.
No.
You wanna speak for Representative Glad, go
You
right
folks
ahead.
have addressed all of my concerns, since I seem to be the one seeking them or promoting them.
No, you're not promoting them, you are stating exactly what the sponsors of this bill would want you to, I think.
Well,
addressing that.
that's coincidence, because after reading the bill, these are things that popped into my head.
It's interesting to me that in testimony, as I read the testimony, a number of these people testified, but they hadn't seen the amendment.
Right, no one had the amendments.
The people that
did not.
supported, like Dean
No.
Mitchner and Mark Joyce, they had not seen the amendment.
That's right.
So they were testifying on the original bill.
Well, the
Which is
amendment
basically
came
the
with
study.
the testimony of the sponsor,
Yeah.
so they wouldn't have had an opportunity.
Right,
Sponsor brought it in, and got that.
right.
The sponsor of this bill was also the sponsor of the death penalty repeal. Did you see him on television last night?
No,
Senator
No, it
was
didn't,
on.
what channel, was it on 9?
Yep.
No, I didn't catch it.
Yeah. He's got a big day today.
Oh, interesting.
That's another matter we don't have time.
Let's not get into
discuss
that.
now. I know how I voted, I'm done with that,
Yeah,
and hope for
yeah.
the best.
Me too. Cast has been, the thing has been cast.
all right, I would entertain a vote or a motion,
Are you
and
ready?
then we could vote. Are you ready to,
I'm willing to make the motion, but I don't feel qualified to write the blurb.
That's all right.
My
No,
level
there's
of
no
knowledge
blurb,
on-
there's no
on-
Not
blurb at this
until we-
point.
Well, I move the ITO on, Senate Bill 343 as amended.
Second.
any other discussion? Okay. I'll call for vote. All those in favor of ITL?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay.
But I say, just the intent is, even though I know in detail it can't be what it is, I still would have liked the idea of, but it's not gonna work anyway, so.
We'll have another chance to speak on Tuesday, and my understanding is that Representative Ladd may be coming in with an amendment, if he's here. He's ill. and he's-
Yeah,
he's-
no, and
he's at-
I'm so worried about him.
I don't know.
Okay,
I
He's
was
wasn't
that
so-
looking.
he's- I consider him a
What
tremendous
was the
guy.
vote?
It was 3-1.
It's 3-1, ITO.
Who voted against? Okay.
Right here.
Oh, okay.
And I will come prepared
Just on
to
principle.
the committee
That's
to
okay,
do some
bring us the
blurbs so that he doesn't get stuck with them like he generally does. We sort of rely on him to do a little more than we should in the committee, and I think we're sort of missing a point here that he has lots of obligations outside, and he wears himself
He
pretty
is a
ragged.
very extremely conscientious legislator, and
He's a
very.
member of Jalpar too, which
I
meets on
know.
Fridays and,
And he's in local government, and
yeah.
And community, yeah, right.
How many things can one man do?
Yeah.
It's
well,
incredible.
his obligation to leave his grandchildren.
Yeah.
I think so.
I'll take a motion to adjourn our little meeting.
I'll make a motion.
Before you do, I want to tell you what Tuesday morning's going to look like in the Senate.
Oh,
By the way, I have indicated that I do not want any more interim studies. We're not going to have any more interim studies. We've got 6 already. Where are you, Catherine?
Well, after we adjourn, I'll give you my take on the ones you asked us to look at, but we
Oh,
need to get
yes,
done with
and
this first.
Mel has.
all in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
I know it's here somewhere. Catherine Ford. I just want to indicate that practically all of our other bills are being heard Tuesday morning, as we are execing these bills. And it makes for very difficult. I can't find it.
So we should go and sign off on the bills before we come to the.
Yes, and I will speak to Senator Stiles, and,
You know that my testimony I gave to that bill you asked me.
yes,
I had to give them a handwritten document, and I was so embarrassed. So if you do have what you want me to do, give me a day, because I don't use the school computers. If I sent it to you, it's probably the only one you could get this year. But I only had an hour or so to do it, you know.
well, you did, and there were so many other things going on all around you.
There were two good testimonies, Representative Almes, and I forgot the name of the other rep ahead of me, which covered most of what I had. I had one little paragraph I did speak to, and they like you to be short and sweet now or there.
Oh, yes.
Okay, here are the bills for Tuesday morning. House Bill 1200 relative to student social media policies by educational institutions. That's at 9 o'clock. 9:30. I can't tell which is what, whether they were starting at, oh no, 9 a.m. 9:30 is 1238 relative to access to assessment materials. 9:45, they're only giving that one 15 minutes. House Bill 1321, which is relative to reporting of armed services vocational aptitude battery scores. That's one that I have a real interest in. And at 10 o'clock, 1534, establishing a commission to study fiscal disparities between public school districts there. And then we have a big one at 10:15, relative to eligibility for in-state tuition rates at the University System of New Hampshire.
What number was that?
474, that's a bill that we heard last year, and we studied all summer,
You don't want me there.
and that's the one that,
That's the one that I really care
yes,
about.
you spoke to and Rick spoke to
I
on the
spoke to
floor.
on the House floor.
Yeah, both incredibly. So, I'm really upset that we can't, and then 1200 is, well, no, then they just list all the sponsors. So it's unfortunate. Now, interestingly enough, we will not start until 10:30, but the reason for that is the speaker has said there may be a caucus. So, otherwise, we could make the 9 o'clock, the 9:30, the 9:45, the 10 o'clock, and
If none of them,
10:15.
if none of them run late, run
Yeah.
long.
Well, that's why we're really good about just going in and signing and having just one member of the committee speak to it, unless the prime sponsor wants.
But they will have the sheets for these all out
I know that. So, but signing on and saying.
at 9.
Yeah, yeah, but if people, I don't, so far we haven't heard anything about a caucus. So there will be time for people to speak to those bills if we wanna organize it.
Well, you probably
I will
this
organize it,
caucus,
yeah.
but someone else might be
Yes,
in this
yeah.
caucus.
Yeah, so if you have an interest,
I'll look them over. You know my feelings on 474, but I would never testify against the decision of the committee.
right,
I find that not to be how I wanna be.
but Ralph.
So don't worry about that.
Ralph Bone will probably speak to 1200, because that's relative to student social media policies.
The one that might need a kick is the commission to study the inequities in
Fiscal disparity.
taxation. What was
Harry
that?
Richardson will probably be there to speak to that, so.
That was one that
You
I,
mean the fiscal disparities?
yes, if you remember, I did actually speak to that session.
Mm.
I think a PI.
Glenn, I don't know if Glenn will be back to speak to 1238, that's his bill. But again, that would be a question the committee could just sign as support, not speaking. 9:45, relative to reporting of armed services, I'm gonna get, I'm not the prime sponsor, but I'm hoping the prime sponsor will be there for that. And then establishing a commission, I will speak to Gary to mention that that's his bill and it's at 10 o'clock. And then the in-state tuition, 474.
I'll be glad to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be,
What time is it?
it's gonna be at 10:15, so it's
10:15.
closed. And I'm going to.
It's on Tuesday.
It's
Yeah.
on Tuesday when we're
Well, we
executing.
exec at 10:30, so,
Yeah.
so you could have a,
I could have a conflict, but I feel strongly about 474s because it's simply a fundamental issue of fairness. And I would really be testifying on behalf of that.
Right.
There isn't any bill in our committee right now that really gets my blood pressure up, so.
okay,
I don't mind going over and testifying in the Senate. If I miss an executive session, then so be it.
All right.
So I
You
will,
won't miss much.
you won't miss much of it.
Yeah.
yeah, so.
No, because we won't start until 10:30.
We'll start till 10:30,
The House.
and my remarks will be short. I'm not, last time I testified, I made my point and left.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what they were.
That's what, yeah,
yeah.
everybody's a soul of lead, you get your point across, they get it, and that's it.
And they like brief testimony.
Yeah, yeah, it works,
And not the
So,
same old,
I
same
will-
old.
exactly, you don't have to sit there. and
10,
dream about
15,
it.
17, I better get my act together.
The interim study bills, when you look over them now, you see a lot of redundancy of what's already come out. And I wonder if, can we, I don't know what you do with them, but there are some of them, I just see them to be not essential. I think the one would be, Representative Cordelli's bill on privacy for teachers. If you remember, we tried out at the end to get that done, and there were issues in terms of gathering data.
Yeah,
And he worked so hard on both of those bills, and that wasn't very far from being an acceptable bill. We're not gonna be able to do it this year anyway, are we?
well, there was that other bill that went along with it, with Neil Kirk's bill, that was so similar.
Well, it's almost like Neil stole it from him.
Well, he
Well,
did,
yeah,
he admitted he did.
but he left out the teacher.
Yeah,
That's the issue. I'm gonna group the assessment bills together and put them into one committee, and then, because there's 2 or 3 that are assessment bills.
but if we determine that this has already been taken care of, what do we do with that? Can we say, well, it's time to kill it?
You just
Not-
say,
we
no
say-
recommendation.
Not
No
recommended for
recommendation.
future, you don't
Okay.
kill, it's not an ideal, it's just not recommended for future
Because
legislation.
other than Glenn's, I really don't wanna get involved with the details of his, but what I'll do is I'll wait and see who you don't get anyone for, cause I don't really care which ones, and then you can just plot me in when you need me.
Well, I hope they have some sort of groupings by Tuesday morning, I'm gonna look over the bills first. 1432, that's Representative Moriarty's bill, it's an assessment bill. 1496. No, 1496. Is also assessment relative to the objectivity and validity of student assessment materials. So I will probably be putting those together initially and then assign just a bigger committee, a bigger study committee.
I'll look them over again before they, but I think, other than Representative Cordelli's, I'd be happy to serve on any of the others. I just don't wanna get into the detail of the bills.
The one that I.
Unless you make me.
We try to do things by volunteering, you know that. We have, that one on community college is gonna be tricky. I mean, actually, I'd forgotten that.
Well, the whole issue gets down to local control at the college, and
Yeah.
I had some questions as to why we should be interfering. in
Yeah.
that. But we can study it if you wanna. If you put me on that, I can tell you right now, I'm presently not in favor. So if you wanted to go forward, probably
Yeah.
don't put me on something.
No, I'll put someone on it that Anyway, I can't find it right now. Oh, here, these are, I keep forgetting how to read this. We have an interim study. We really did well on getting rid of bills, but they'll all be back.
They're just gone for a little while.
Ann and I have been around so long that we know.
That's when you get people shifting from committee to committee, they just get so tired of seeing the
Seeing
same
the same
bill.
bills.
Well, I'll try, there'll be enough, in my time, to try to get me bumped out, so hopefully get someone else will have a different view on it, so. It'll be interesting to see that in the election, we'll see what it is.
You'll be, if you're,
Oh, wow,
you'll be,
You do.
I said they'll try.
Right.
they're wasting their time.
This is so interesting. Interim study.
Can I ask you this question though, if we're in Ed committee, of course, we know if there's a power shift, but all things considered the same, and we're happy here, do you get an opportunity to come back?
Usually.
Well, don't you, I don't know how it's done on the
Yeah,
Republican.
you have a
side.
slip, you're.
You have a
you're-
slip and you put it as your first choice, and if you really want the committee, put it as your only choice.
Yeah, okay.
But then you take a chance too.
Yeah, you can end up on the dog catcher committee.
It depends on who the speaker's gonna be.
Yeah.
Well, my second choice would be science, oh, man, they're down here forever. Some of their bills that have 20 hours of testimony.
That was my first committee.
Well,
And there's lots
We
of,
could go in finance and work 7 days a week.
there's lots of reading and, lots of hearing time. And science technology.
After the frustration of trying to file through some changes in the tax laws on a couple of areas, that I wasn't done with it.
He's collecting
Oh,
money.
man. No one knows anything about it, and they don't wanna study it.
Well, that's why the number of bills that we've had introduced to in education, and I've been on education now for 4 years. My first committee was ED&A, and that was a wonderful first committee to be on. Because even though the bills weren't all that interesting, you learned everything about the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch, all the boards, all the councils, and retirement was another issue, and licensing, all of the licensing, credentialing, and that's done in the state. So
Certification.
it really was interesting. But we've had bills in education, I think we had one either last year or this year, was to do a study of all the laws.
Yeah,
And the
actually,
first-
that was Representative.
Yeah,
That's
well, he
nice.
introduced it a couple of years ago, and there was somebody sitting right where you are now, she was a representative from Litchfield or Londonderry somewhere, and she said, all right, before we vote on this, hands up everybody that wants to serve on this study. And nobody put their hands up, so she said, I move ITL.
He does make a good point that we have lost it served no good purpose.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely,
I
but
mean,
nobody wants to
no.
do what
You
they
know,
do.
that should be a standing committee.
Yeah.
Or it should be a committee with hired people.
A
Yeah,
joint
law
committee,
students,
sort of.
we've got a law center right here in,
Yeah,
in
we should
Concord.
contract
Boy, we
that out
could-
and have an up or down vote on the whole thing.
Yeah, we could have them doing
Let the
their-
law students, I mean, there's 36 volumes of law and it's just a mess.
Well, are we through?
Pardon?
We're through.
Are we through?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, we adjourn,
We'll
yeah.
see you Tuesday.
Tuesday
We
morning.
can wander over and see what's happening in the Senate, I think I'll do that for a little while.
I just need that sheet back,
Yeah.
this folder, and then we're.
Yeah, am I supposed to be the time we started and stopped it?